Hello, this is Chris Jansen. Welcome to the End Evil podcast.
It was a crazy.
But I hadn't got a chance to get them on the various platforms, and I wanted to have them on 3 or 4 or 5 different platforms. I think there's other content creators out there that are struggling to keep up with getting their uploads done, and so I want to recommend them to my good friend Jerry. Jerry has done an excellent job helping me with my podcast and catching up on things I was behind on.
Sometimes when you upload a video, there can be errors, and that's the stuff I don't want content creators such as yourself to go through. I want to help you. I upload it to your platform. I upload clips to media channels in a fast and efficient manner. I serve freedom fighters. I take weight off their shoulders so they can focus on their content creation. It takes a while to just get a clip uploaded, and sometimes you don't want to worry about that stuff. I take this to heart, and I help the people that care for freedom.
Hello, freedom, natural law friends. This is Chris Jansen. I'm here with the One Great Work Warriors, minus our valuable Crypt Rick, who's facing some health issues tonight and trying to weather the storm. So we're missing Rick, but we're having a special meeting tonight, a special recording, because we've been inspired by some new ideas, some new thoughts that came across our way of our man Jim here, who has been reading some books. And he read these books by Daniel Quinn, starting with Ishmael. And he brought this to the meeting, and we all got excited about the topic. And in the following weeks, we've all read this book ourselves on our own time. And we decided to meet back up and have like a book review conversation about this book and about how it affected us and what we think is important that you gain from it. So I'm going to pass it to Jim. He's written a little something and done a lot of thinking on this topic and the subject matter in this book. Thanks so much, Jim, for bringing this to us.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, all you guys. Yeah, I do a lot of thinking about this. I read the book Ishmael around in 2018 and had a big impact on me. But as the years went on and I got to learn more and more about natural law and that, it even made more sense. But I really just want to thank you guys first for I appreciate it because I've been since we first met a little over a year ago. I've been kind of. Did you guys ever hear this book, Ishmael? And I've been pushing it. Yeah, none of you guys have had, and every once in a while I'd bring it up, and then I let it go, and then come around like the last couple of months, I just started really pushing it, and I just appreciate it, and I'm grateful that you guys, went ahead and read it, and even felt like it was cool to talk about. So just to give some quick context about the book, because it's like a novel, but it's kind of combines reality with fiction. So Ishmael, the main character, is a gorilla, and he can speak to humans telepathically. And so you got to kind of like use your imagination and just let that go. And he's the teacher, and he uses the Socratic method to teach his students about the imbalance the about ecology, about the imbalance that we live in. And so, it's really cool that, it's a very philosophical book. And, I hope by us speaking about it, it inspires some of you guys to even pick it up. So I know like us here in this group and people watching, like we all are aware of the biggest lie that exists in our consciousness, right? That there is no such thing as truth, right? And we know that this is a belief system that has been instilled upon us. And that our minds are being minds and we have forgotten who we truly are. And that is our greatest challenge, is healing the consciousness that is being manipulated and controlled through this mining process. So that's the biggest lie. But one of the main themes in Ishmael is another huge lie, and that is that the planet belongs to us, that the planet was made for us, right? Like this is a very harmful belief system. And Ishmael explains, this this is our belief system, and all the other beings on this planet live in balance with nature. They live within the law of rhythm, that they belong to the planet. And we're the only ones that believe that the planet belongs to us. And so, as far as natural law is concerned, Daniel Quinn, the author, it didn't seem like he had like the full understanding of all of laws of nature. But as you read, it becomes clear he's referring to the law of rhythm. He calls it other names. He has other names for it, such as the peacekeeping law or the law of limited competition. And he's pointing out that we are living in ignorance of the law of rhythm as far as ecology is concerned, right? And we are not exempt from the law of rhythm when it comes to living in balance with nature. And there's no technology that can override ecology. Like, if you think of an airplane can defy gravity, but it doesn't mean it's not subject to gravity, right? So this is like definitely um, this these laws of nature that we have to pay attention to because of the consequences. So our bones, flesh, and blood is made up of the metals, minerals, and liquid of the earth. So in that respect, we are not unlike all other creatures and beings on this planet, right? We're not animals like they are when it comes to knowing the difference between right and wrong, but we are mammals, like we are primates. And if you look at primates in nature, they do not herd, right? They live in social groups and live in balance with their environment. They do not destroy their environment. And if you look at animals that herd in nature, such as like buffalo or wildebeest, they do not stay in one place. They migrate because they're living within the cycle and the law of rhythm of nature. Like, and these are things that Ishmael points out. Like he gives all different kinds of examples, and these ones I'm just making up on my own. So, but it was always about these living within the law of rhythm and the cycles and the symbiosis and biodiversity of the environment, and not over competing with the other animals. So animals that herd don't stay in one place because they're living within the law, because to stay in that place for too long is to be harmful. And we're always talking about harm, right? And that's what we do. It's it's primates, so that's part of the mind control too. Like that's the herd mentality. But if the herd mentality in nature is in alignment with moral law, right? They're not destroying the environment, but we've been put in like this prison, this mind prison, and our herd mentality is more like a cattle. But that's what we're doing. We are like herding and staying in the same place, which is harmful to the environment. And so like that's what Ishmael is asking, what about the rights of the planet? What about the rights of all the other sentient beings that you share the environment with? And like that believing the planet belongs to us is to claim ownership over it and cause harm, right? Claiming ownership, that's like the slavery mindset. And it's a harmful action. So to be in ignorance of the law of rhythm is harmful. And that is an action that we carry out. And the truth is in plain sight. If you look outside, you go outside and you really look, we're out of balance. And I could go on, but there's so much more to it. But I'll pass it to Brandon.
Jim, thank you for bringing this book to the group's awareness. And one thing that this book does point out is, and this is the most important thing that should be noted with the book Ishmael, is the mindset. You know, the mindset that we have been indoctrinated and mind control to have. And he makes a great point of this because he boils it down to two mindsets. You have the takers and you have the leavers. So the mindset of the takers, like Jim has described, is the takers believe that they control and that the earth belongs to them. So with this mindset, it's going to influence wrong behavior. It's going to get you out of balance. So with this taker mindset, you buy into more relativism. You're going to be very ego. You're going to want to control. You're going to want to dominate. And if you think of the opposite of that, which would be the takers, they understand that they are stewards, to the earth. So they'll leave, certain food, because they're not going to take help 100%. They're willing to live in harmony, with other life forms and with nature. He doesn't really go too much into the lever mindset because, of course, the way he breaks it down, and if he'll look at objective reality, this lever mindset is dying because this taker mindset is taking over. It wants to control and it's pushing off its influence and breeding more and more of the same mindset. And one thing that he talks about to prove how this taker mindset is so dangerous is he talks about the law of limited competition. And what this is and how he explains it is when man has this taker mindset when it comes to agriculture, how when it comes to pretty much anything, whenever we have any form of competition that, that may take away from us, we wage complete war against it and we'll destroy them, we'll attack their food, we'll attack their way of life. Um, he said, that competition is a good thing. Like you're never really going to get rid of competition, but once you wage war on your competitors, sort of like we see now, you know, then that's when it becomes a problem. And of course, that's when it becomes immoral. Because think about it, if you attack your competitor's way of living, their means to survival, you're actually waging war on them and their families. So, hell, again, what is this mindset, that is influencing this immoral behaviors? And of course, how you can say this taker mindset has been around for thousands and thousands of years, if not hundreds of thousands of years, which is, true, has been talked about in many, cultures. But the main thing with this book, if you do read it, the main thing that should be taken away is the mindset that the people have been indoctrinated to have. So I'm going to pass it on to Chris.
Thanks, Brandon. I had to unmute myself there. Yeah, I mean, I had a lot to say about this book because I love philosophy and I love conversations with people about philosophy. And it seems somewhat rare to me to see the level of consideration this author gave to philosophy compared to what I often see out there. That being said, I did find myself a little disappointed that he didn't keep going with the thought process. And there were certain questions at the end, like, okay, what do we do with this knowledge? But the basic story is the author sees this advertisement in the paper, and it says basically, do you want to be an apprentice to help change the world? And he's intrigued by this and curious and feels himself compelled. And he goes to this random office in this building, and then turns out there's this gorilla in a cage who communicates with him through his mind. And this gorilla says he's tried to teach several apprentices over the years and hasn't felt like he's had any success with his teachings. And so we go along with the author as he sits there listening to Ishmael the gorilla sort of expand on these ideas that are really unique and interesting, because the way it's all framed is from this point of view of this gorilla who's been in captivity its whole life. And as he says, he understands captivity better than anyone. And there does come a certain point in the book when he points out that all of us are not free, that all humans on this planet that are in the taker mentality, as he calls them, are trapped in a type of captivity because of this taker mindset. And I think that's a huge realization, and the way he presents it gives the listener or the reader an opportunity to kind of look at that from a different perspective. Like a good example of the perspective is the gorilla is describing his process of learning. When he first began to make these realizations, he was moved from like a zoo situation to kind of more of a circus, right? Where they'd given him a name at the circus. And he started noticing that everyone came up to the cage was yelling out the name. What was it, Jim? The name, it was, I'm blanking it out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And then the chimpanzee in the cage next to him also had a name, and he was noticing all the kids in the crowd were yelling this name. And it was the first time he realized that he was an individual from these people's point of view, and differentiating that not only am I an individual thing with a name, but these people think I'm something different from what they are. And the animals are different from gorillas. It was like all these little subtle realizations that we all take for granted. But from the point of view of this gorilla, it kind of asks your mind to stretch a little bit and be like, what if you were looking at this whole situation from another perspective? Could you then see that basically we're all captives to what he calls mother culture's myth? He asks the author early on in the conversation, like, tell me the myth of your people. And the author's like, what do you mean? There's no myth of my people. We just have history. He's like, no, it's a myth. Tell me the myth. And he winds up using this term mother culture to describe our mythos, this belief system that the takers have sort of fallen into and gathered over time, where humans basically think that they own the earth, and that they get to decide what other animals get to live or don't live, and that they get to decide. And basically in the story, he kind of draws this line in the sand in history, basically when this major change sort of happened in the human race, when we went from just being kind of like the leavers, the people that were hunters and gatherers and got their food in various ways. Then all of a sudden we came across agriculture, and not just any kind of agriculture. I think the most important term he uses in this whole book that sticks with me is totalitarian agriculture. And the problem at this shift in time, he goes back to like the Fertile Crescent, was that it wasn't just that some humans decided, oh, we're going to start growing our food in this more technological means through agriculture, but it was that the people decided that not only are we going to live this way, but everyone has to live this way. So in other words, if you're a hunter and gatherer, you can't live like that anymore, because that's not civilized, that's primitive. So I guess he's comparing the leavers and the takers to the way our mother culture would describe primitive and civilized. And he's really asking you in so many ways through this conversation with this gorilla, how civilized are we? How's that working out for us? And is this time where we decided to start using the land like just a resource that we owned and stack up as much food as we want, then we get more and more and more people. And the more food that's grown in this totalitarian agriculture style, we create an unsupportable population that can kind of expand out of control. And he uses this term to grow without limits. And I think that's kind of like what Jim is alluding to, where we're getting out of balance or out of the rhythm when we've been allowing ourselves as humans to grow without limits, to do things with no consideration for what could come in terms of negative consequences for the whole of humanity or for future generations. So to me, that's kind of just throwing out there what I took from the whole book in terms of what's it's about. If I were to have to like write the little blurb on the side of the book, that's basically the way I would describe this book and what it's about and how it hit me. And I'll pass it on to Derek.
Bonjour. How's it going, everyone? Yeah, thanks for everyone showing up. And yeah, I like these types of chats. Everyone, coming from a little bit different angles. People are going to interpret things a little bit differently, or we might strike a lot of chords that are on the same frequency of just how we saw the book, the impression it had upon us. And by the way, real quick, is this going to include spoilers or what?
Yeah, I think it's okay. I mean, hopefully
Yes,
people will read the book, but don't hold back.
Yeah, man, because I thought it was a good book. I was kind of impressed. I wasn't expecting it to kind of unfold the way it did, especially after just, not judging the book by its cover, but I did the audio book, and I prefer to read. It just, you absorb it a lot more. And but I found it kind of funny in the beginning, a little cynical. And I like how they had the quote posted on the cage, and they had that at the end to kind of round it off, even though I felt like the end ended a little abruptly for me. And I was really sad when good old Ish bit the dust just out of nowhere. And but the quote in the beginning, and I like how the author really describes the emotion and how the guy was kind of befuddled of reading this thing. And I feel like, I want to say, I forget, but I think he read it before he saw the gorilla, Ishmael. But the quote is, "Without man, is there any hope for a gorilla?" I might be paraphrasing, it might not be word for word, but it's along that phrase. And like, how would I would try to put myself in that, character's feet, like, like, damn, is that, who wrote this? Like, it's one of those things that make you, question a lot. It's like, but I like how there's like this evolution perspective from Ishmael. I wasn't, telepathic gorilla, man. That's cool. Yeah, and confronting man on mythology, dogma, their idea of, rulers of the world, peace and war, and with the believers tied in with the takers, aside from the leavers, right? As you guys mentioned. But it really gives one, it allows someone to really introspect, aside from what's, written and portrayed in the book, but just, to kind of, wander off on your own thoughts of examining what is humans' like real true connection to nature, or is it this mother culture, whatever, right? And you just look around, you look at the historicity of, how we've treated this planet. And and this is part of my awakening that that really just threw me into a different frequency shift because I just wanted to really understand human origins, the history of this planet, like for reals and that kind of stuff, and Mother Nature, and understanding like the eco side that goes on. And like it made me sick to my stomach where I was, profusely weeping to the point I was just like, shaking and that kind of stuff. People talk about awakening some blissful shit. No, it's fucking emotionally, you fucking explode into like rock bottom type of shit almost, But like these types of books can be that catalyst to kind of like dig deeper into these things and really try to pull yourself out of this insane equation. It's a fucking hell cycle. I mean, how many fucking billions of animals are killed every fucking year? That alone, And we just got our farms and this and that, and you take it to the law of correspondence. Who's farming us? As far as like the controllers and whatever the hell. But the what you mentioned, Chris, when in the book they talk about agriculture is being introduced, and that was mentioned in a book. I don't know if you're familiar with this one called Sapiens. Okay, it was really popular actually in France a couple years ago. I think it came out. Yeah, it talks about how agriculture really sparked like the formation of cities, and like that permanent residence where they didn't have to be hunter-gatherer nomads and stuff, and follow those seasonal rhythms throughout the year, as animals do, right? Jim, as you mentioned before. So I just like some of the Socratic questions that he posed, like what is the destiny of man? What did I have? Are humans exempt to any of the laws of nature, right? Natural law. We tend to kind of overlook that. Obviously there's been manipulation, perversion, and inversion of these things due to manipulation, as we've covered in other chats. But it's just interesting. And I like hearing a perspective from an animal, like talking to humans, even if it was written by an author who's human, obviously. But it reminded me of a quote from KRS-One talking about the police. Like the police are here to serve and protect us, right? But like if the police were sent to protect us, who was going to protect us from the police, kind of thing, And you could take that to the animal-human relationship, instead of living symbiotically with them. They have no trust in us because, we fucking slaughter them all the time for fucking sport or for food or, whatever, So, any animal asking folks like, hey, I thought you were here to protect us. You're supposed to be the rulers of the world, right? As your doctrines say you are and this and that, but, you ain't no steward, you guys are fucking exploiting us like hell. Imagine if animals did that to humans. And Steve Cutts, y'all know his work? Those little couple-minute clips of, the raw, like, just like how the grotesque treatment of the planet in like a cool cartoonish fashion. But I dragged on long enough. So, Jerry.
Yeah, I mean, hold on a second. All right, got a little lag, but I'm back. Yeah, dragged long, but man, you make some good points, Derek. Just got to start off what I'm gonna say by saying thanks for letting me speak and share my voice here on your platform, Chris. It's much appreciated. I don't take it for granted. And from what I've heard, it's like I feel like humans are taking for granted what we have here on Earth, like this ability to live, to thrive, and we're distorting it by overdoing things. We're not in balance, like Jim says. And it comes down to that mentality. The first law of what is it called? The first hermetic principle is a mentalism. So it all starts in the mind. And if we have that taker mind, that's a great
um, it's brilliant actually how the gorilla, like, he has all this experience being captivated, and he's the one teaching. He's sharing how the takers are captivated themselves, and I thought that was huge. So it's almost like, yeah, in the short term, takers might get benefit from um, uh, growing too much food, but in the long term, it's really harming the planet, which harms us. So I don't see how that makes any sense. Uh, but if we have like a symbiotic relationship with nature, with the earth, then we're able to really live to our fullest potential. And I'm not going to drag on long. I just thank you for the recap, Chris. And I recommend reading this book and listening to it at the same time, like Brandon did. I'll pass it back to you, Jim.
Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, no, it's cool to hear all you guys, perspectives on it. And we're all definitely, yeah, like on the same page. The Brandon and I had discussed this about, the root cause, of course, is, and we keep saying this, it's the taker mentality, it's the mind, it's the mindset, it's the the belief system that the planet belongs to us, right? And I also got caught up in this paradox that I was bringing up, dealing with the second law of correspondence, of how we're living so out of balance on the outside that that is sustaining the immoral behavior, like the immoral thoughts. Like it's the root cause is the thought, the immoral thought has created the external imbalance, and the thoughts have been imprinted. But it makes me think that, like the social engineers want it that way, right? They want us to be living out of balance in the external to sustain the immoral mindset. And that's something I think about a lot. Um, any of you guys have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, remember, if you want to control somebody, if I was a social engineer, then I would want to, control the environment, because the environment, it is going to have some form of influence. That was one of the main things in, behaviorism. Is you can control the environment. Because remember how Skinner put, pigeons in, his little Skinner boxes. Who was it? Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson. They all wanted to control the environment, because there is a level of influence. But what a social engineer will never tell you is about the internal. Because hell, again, if you're in power, you want to maintain power. So you give someone a limited set of information, they're going to build their reality and their worldviews off that limited set of information. How this is how, how mind control works. It's just like if you tell a slave that, they were born a slave and it's in your blood to be a slave, they're going to build their worldview off that. And then they'll never really know anything outside of that. So from the social engineers, have a perspective, they don't really want you to know that the true power comes from the internal, you know, because like Michael Tsarion said, one of his greatest quotes is as if you in control of your psyche, if you in control of yourself, there is no external force, there is no external, there is nothing external that can control you. So yeah, it all starts from the mind, and that's what as the book was trying to portray. And see, we have a lot of people still focusing on the external. So they've become a victim of that external influence. So then they look for solutions where externally, and hell, that's the
Yeah.
problem. A lot of people don't understand that the solutions are internal. The external is going to always be the external because it's the objective reality. But what is it that you can control? Yourself. How was it, how that you own yourself, how the way you think. And of course, how the way you think is going to be influenced by the information that you take in and the consciousness and the environment. But once you gain control of all of that and you align, how your thoughts, your emotions, and of course your actions will be aligned, then that's when the true manifestation, the true, activation of that inner spirit, starts to turn on. Then there is no means of external control because all that power is coming from internal. Derek, you got something you want to say on that?
Not really. Sorry, should I cut myself off? Yeah, I was looking at my notes. Sorry. But you were talking about externalization.
Right. Yeah. Hell, Jim had had talked about the how social engineers controlling the health environment.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was looking at actually. And it makes a lot of sense. I don't know if you guys saw a great presentation, Free Your Mind conference 2016, I want to say. Bob Tuskin did a really great presentation called Scarcity-Based Mind Control. And yeah, the social engineers have, manufactured so many illusory things like, oh, overpopulation, not enough food, and not enough money, not enough time, not enough, all this stuff. And it's perpetuated, this fear-based mind control that, persuades people to make wrong decisions. And obviously it plays into the whole politics and all that stuff. So yeah, it's hard to get back to the earth and be an independent farmer and just like be in solitude with the land. But I'm not going to digress like I usually do. But yeah, it just leads to this, taker mentality. It's really human centric that kind of doesn't include our fellow brothers and sisters of any species, really, like. And when I say ecocide, I don't know if people understand what that means. It means like the whole ecosystem, anything involved, all the fucking elements as well. How much toxicity do we have? You look at the causal or the effects of all that shit being played out as far as like human beings being born. The food isn't as nutrient dense as before. Water's, all the fucking elements, right? The air. And
Yep.
goddamn, like we're powerful
That's
beings.
wonderful.
Obviously, that's why they have to put all this, draconian shit upon us. But it sucks that there's so many other collateral damage to the whole planet. So yeah, that's what I gotta say.
That's basically it. Like us living out of balance in one area has consequences in another part of the world. And yeah, ecocide, um, that's death, right? So yeah, and the one of the first things you're gonna see as a consequence of living out of balance is pollution. That's a real visible effect. So take a look outside, and then if you there's pollution, then you know you're living out of balance. Look at your water, look at the air you're breathing, and think about that.
Um, one aspect of this book that I found to be particularly poignant or it sticks out is I think he did a really good job with the author and the author's mentality, because as he's sitting down to have these conversations with Ishmael, like it shows certain times Ishmael the gorilla is getting frustrated with this guy and he's like, come on, think a little bit here, don't
Yeah,
force me to tell you the whole story. He's asking the man, tell me the story of your people, tell me the story of your myth, and he's like, we don't have one, and he has to force it out of him. And what you kind of come around to, which I think is an interesting parallel to a conversation we've had previously called education is the solution, is that there's been a process of humans teaching other humans to do things this way. And it reminds me of something you were saying, Jim, where it's like this feedback loop. Yeah, it all does start from the mind, like Jerry said with mentalism. But when we project faulty thoughts or terrible ideas out into the world, and then we repeat them, and then we force other people to repeat them in mass, there's this echo coming back of this voice of everybody around us repeating this message of idiocy over and over and over. And even in the book, he talks about, the rise of the Nazis and the power that they reached in their time. And one thing I remember that really stuck out for me, because I remember going to the Anne Frank Museum with my dad when I was young, and all on the wall they had like some of the materials that were used like in schools for like in their math books, and it would be like a bunch of pictures of little soldiers and then tanks. So they were adding up tanks and soldiers, and it was subtle things like this that they were putting right into the education to get the minds of the children already on the page of, oh yeah, tanks, guns, that's normal stuff, and it took a lot of education through history to get people where we're at. They're very intentional process, and I think very often people kind of just think of everything as an evolution, not to say that evolution isn't a real thing, but there's been a very real process of educating people that this is the way we do things and this is not how we do things. And I noticed that in my own life experience, like in school, for instance, with the classes I was in, everybody had to stand up and salute the flag in the morning and sing this song. And I remember like feeling very rebellious towards that. Like, why do I have to do that? Like, I don't, that flag doesn't mean that much to me. I don't understand why that's so important to you guys. And it's like the gorilla's point of view. If you step out of the shroud of our mother culture history and what we've been indoctrinated into, and if you were able to look at it from an alien point of view, you would be able to see a lot of the inconsistencies, things that don't make sense. Like, for instance, police is a good example, right? Money comes out of my paycheck my whole life, from somewhere between a third and a half of every energy I make in my whole life. And a huge percentage of that money goes into this force of people that want to drive around and point the finger at me and maybe even take my money if I cross a certain line or a certain speed, or basically I'm paying these people a force, a gang, to kind of beat up on me and make me feel out of place in my own town. And why would you do that? From a foreign perspective, from an alien perspective, like, that's totally silly. Why would you tax yourself, unnecessarily? You already made the money. You don't need someone else to come along and take it from you again. That's silly. And like with the food thing, does it make sense to force everybody to use the same paradigm of how we gather food? What if some people want to travel with the sun? And over and over through history, we can see examples of, Catholicism or Christianity, these major world religions, whether it's their crusades, or saying, no, this is the Christian way, which is pretty similar to the civilized way, just kill whole areas of population, genocide of human beings. So I'm not even getting into animals, just how humans treat one another, genocide, waging war, trying to kill every human in a whole town. We were just reading about Bryce's Day massacre, which was, this Christian says, kill all the pagans on this island. Anyone who's not Christian, just kill them like they're dogs, right? So over and over, humans have shown this tendency to do something that animals would never do. An animal might just kill another animal because it wants to eat it, but it's not going to kill all of them. It's certainly not going to go there. They might go, wolves might go hunting in a pack to hunt one animal that they want to eat, but they're not going to hunt their competition and kill all their competition. That's sort of the examples they give in the book. So these are unnatural ways of being that we've developed as humans, and very intentionally educated other humans on this is how we do things, and punish those who don't do it that way. So this isn't just a natural progression of how we had to be because it's our nature to be this way. We have purposefully chosen to educate ourselves to keep doing this process, even though we can see it's causing harm in multiple ways.
Yeah, it's been a mind virus that has spread. You could see it in most recent history with, what happened in North America when the Europeans came. The American Indians, which I don't like calling that, but the people who were there first,
Native people.
they don't even like being native, but anyway, they they're the people of Turtle Island, and they were living in balance with nature. Like they were the leavers. They practiced some forms of agriculture, but not the totalitarian where food became a commodity and they forced it upon all the other tribes, Like one tribe didn't force it on the other tribes. And so, I mean, they weren't perfect, and they had wars and they fought over hunting ground and that, but they were way more in balance with nature. They were way more moral in the respect that they didn't have cities of such immoral cities and the pollution and the black plagues and the the feudal system and the popes and the kings and the queens and all that and like a Bible. They didn't have a book loaded with darkness, dark history. Like they didn't have it that like then they were there for 10,000 years as well, but they were living in balance. They were living with um with nature. So they were way more moral. Um and then as the Europeans came over, like you were just saying, Chris, then they got killed off, called genocide for the most part, and then over the years, educated, indoctrinated, so they ended up fighting in the same army of that killed their ancestors, like in present day. Like now they're in the U.S. Army. Like 100 years or so ago, the U.S. Army was killing this and still like fucking around with them. But yeah, another fascinating thing, like you mentioned too, was how I've mentioned it in the beginning, how animals do act immoral. Like they may eat their baby, and we'll see that, and people use that as a justification to say like we're animals, and like gives us the right to be immoral. But when it comes to the law of rhythm, animals live morally. They don't know right and wrong when it comes to like killing, like eating their baby. We may look at that as wrong or something, but and like you said, they don't outcompete each other. Like we do all that. We do know the difference between right and wrong. Like we do have morality, but we're the ones who are living wrong. Like we're living out of balance, out of the law of rhythm. But the animals who can behave immorally from time to time, or we say they do, and use it as a justification for our behavior. They're always living in balance with nature. They're always living morally within the moral law. And we know the difference between right and wrong, and we're living out of balance and being harmful.
I want to make a correction. Um,
Sure.
I don't think we should be using the term morally with animals. I think that is an incorrect way of putting out our words, and the reason for this is because, hell, again, animals don't have the option to get out of balance. You know, like like we can't leave out how consciousness here. There's how differences, hell, in consciousness. So hell, when we start, hell, using how moral, how animals, then we are kind of opening up cans of like hell worms. That's applied to certain levels of consciousness, and I just want to make that how distinction. But yes, hell, animals will always be in the law of rhythm until their consciousness is able to he'll get higher. But how I told you, Jim, do animals have the option to live out of harmony with the principle of rhythm? No, they don't. So I just wanted to make that, have distinction, because it's the consistency, consistency.
Yeah, I'd like to chime in on that also, Brandon, because natural law is the central theme and the most important aspect of the work that we do, what we call the one great work. And educating people who care to listen or think for themselves about how to access and understand what natural law is the most difficult thing we do. Because people, when you use the word natural law, they right away think about nature and nature's laws, you might say. And that's one way we could separate the two. In this book, it does talk about this unwritten law of nature where animals don't try to outcompete one another or wage war, right? And this is the thought process that Ishmael prompts in the writer of the book, who is the character in the story. When we're talking about natural law, we're not talking about animals. We're talking about humans being separate from animals. And I know any one of us would go head to head and toe to toe in an argument with someone who says we are just animals. And maybe that will have to be a future topic, because we are not just animals, because we have expanded capacity for thinking and questioning that animals don't have. And that being said, gorilla is an interesting sort of exception, where certain gorillas have a very expanded ability to think. And I shared with this group, there's a famous video of Coco the monkey, the gorilla, who was recorded, who was taught to do sign language, what basically explains some of the problems with the human kind and the way we think. And so I think there are certain exceptions to that rule, and that main one being monkeys and gorillas having a lot more capacity than almost all animals. But when we're specifically talking about natural law, we're talking about our ability to relate to other human beings for the most part. 99.9% of what we're talking about is the results. What do you get when you have certain types of behavior in the world? There's going to be consequences, right? And that's what's called inherent. That's what Mark calls inherent, that the laws of how humans treat one another, there's always going to be a cause and effect relationship, and it's based on how we treat one another. And this is all based on morality. And the idea is that morality isn't something that we create, like a code of ethics or a set of rules. It's something that exists in the fabric of reality itself. If it were not so, then why would we feel like anything is wrong? You could rape, plunder, kill, do whatever you want to get on top endlessly, which seems like what a lot of humans have done through history, is they're ignoring their conscience, what we know to exist as a conscience. But most of us understand that, yeah, like eating a baby when you're a human is wrong, right? Why is it wrong? You could try to figure out the logical reasons, and I bet we'll come up with some good ones why it is logically not a good idea, but it's also wrong. And we know that, like, raping a child is wrong. Why? Ask yourself why. Think deeper, right? Is it because we decided it so, or it just is so? And those of us who understand this concept of natural law, that anyone can understand from their own heart when you consider it, that these things that are wrong, types of stealing, can be recognized anywhere, anytime, by any person, right? We don't have that expectation of giraffes and rats, that they're going to understand those things. And it doesn't apply to them. It's not the same scenario. They're not waging war. They're not killing all the competition. It applies to us because this is something that we can change. We can do differently. We don't have to steal from one another. We don't have to go kill a whole race of other people because we don't like them or we're afraid of what they may or may not do. These are choices that we have. And when we look inside of ourselves, and when we consider it with our balanced brain, we can realize that no, that doesn't feel right, does it? Deep down, there's something that's bigger than me that says, no, you should not rape, you should not kill. And if you can't get in touch with that, if you're so dead inside of your soul and you can't get in touch with that, then you're basically destroyed and you're not even a human being, right? Being human, that's what being human is having a conscience and being able to discern and recognize that things just are wrong on a very deep level. And it's not because I said it so, just because it is. So I hope that provides some clarity,
Well, yeah, I don't know. I understand, like, I probably shouldn't have used the word moral. I should have just said natural law, because I don't think the animals have a moral conscience. I didn't say that, but there's the irony. Yeah, they're gonna live within the natural law because they are, like, they're not separate from nature. They don't know the difference between right and wrong, but that's how they are naturally. We do know the difference between right and wrong, and we're choosing to live out of the balance. But if we can process, and that's what this book is about, getting people to process our behavior, you know, this action, this harmful action, this way of living out of balance, right? With our environment stacked on top of each other is harmful. And we can understand that. I mean, we have the free will to do it, but it does, we do know that we're not exempt from it. And so I don't know if that makes sense. Like, I know, like, that, animals don't have morality, but I was saying that just by default, when it comes to the law of rhythm, they are in alignment with the moral law, which we're not. But I don't know. I keep getting stuck on that. I don't know if that made sense. I totally hear
Yeah.
that, and then
I was
Brandon's gonna say I'm being inconsistent, maybe. I don't.
Remember what I told you,
I
Jim?
think I was clear.
He'll remember how I told you how when we had that meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause hell, there's a reason why I said that. Cause I know what you know, but sometimes, getting out in words, hell, we can, hell confuse ourselves or say the wrong words. So hell again, just
Yeah.
to correct you, is natural law doesn't apply to the animal kingdom. Just want to put that correction out there. They have their own set of laws, that they have to hell abide by hell within nature. Hell, that's why they can't get out of rhythm. We are we have an animal side to us, but we also have a mind, a central nervous system, and we got these hands, so our consciousness is at a different a level. Hell, is higher. There are more responsibility. There's more complexity. There's more. How knowledge that we can, hell attain. There are definitely more graver consequences if we choose to live, out of balance, and that's what we are experiencing, with or through natural law. Because we're just doing this to ourselves. And one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is the taker mindset is based in fear. I mean, because if you're going to wage war on your competitors, what would be the driving force behind that? It would have to be fear, right? Hey, my competitors are going to take away some of my business. Hey, how the competitors are going to take some of my crops, or some of how my form of hell of property, and you don't really necessarily know that. So you wage this war based in fear. And one thing that this taker mindset is also equivalent to the mindset of Watiko, the archonic mindset. And it's definitely, I would hope everybody would know this, that we're really just talking about the satanic mindset. I mean, like, are we not talking about the
Yep.
satanic mindset that Mark has, have described? So this mindset can go under so many different names, but when you boil it down, it's still based in egoism and it's still based in moral relativism. Wanting to dominate, wanting to control. It is the mindset of the slave, master, those who want to rule. It is the mindset of the ruling class. And unfortunately, this, hell, the ruling class has given us a small portion of, like of this mindset. And that's what we see in society. So we see this taker mindset wanting to control, you know, things at a smaller level, like how your neighbor acts, how people in the store act, how people in society act, you know. So we see it everywhere, man. We see it everywhere. And I love the book. I love the book, but a few things with the book that I was discouraged about. One thing was there was no mention of morality. Um, Not whatsoever, because I was hoping that that would have been like the end game, solution was teach people about, have morality. So I don't know where the author stands on, objective morality. I would hope he would, know that objective morality is real, because if he would say, he buys into moral subjectivism, then that would be a contradiction. And then two, there isn't really like no focus on consciousness. And once you leave that at the door, it kind of brings things down, because you see too many people trying to equate stuff to the animal kingdom. And I'm like, stop doing that. You can't do that, because you can't leave consciousness at the door. And that's one of my problems. So with his book is he leaves out objective morality, he leaves out, consciousness, and tries to apply, well, because the animals are, like doing this, then like, no, you can't. Like, things are far more complicated and complex when it comes to human beings. And then three, he doesn't really offer any solutions as far as, like, what can we do to get back into this lever mindset. And hell, again, like as an author, I can kind of understand that, because you want to have a second book and a third book, which the author does. He has the story of B, which is the second book, and My Ishmael, which is the third book. And if anyone, of course, that wants to read them, you can find them online. But yeah, it was just no like real practical solution that anybody could help incorporate. It was just more pointing out a fundamental problem, and then just it's almost like he flashed you, like, and then said, oh, well, that's all you're getting, like he whet your appetite to get you started, but then he didn't really give you the full course meal as far as, well, here's what you can do as far, as solutions and stuff like that. But yeah, a great book that will really get anybody thinking. And I think this could be a great book that you can give to someone to kind of get them into the understanding of, her natural law. It's like, hey, I read this book, what did you think? And then try to bring in the teachings of objective morality, have the law of freedom and have natural law. And there is one caveat, is somebody who is ignorant can read this book and totally go down the wrong path, can totally go down like the climate cult, save the planet, and like don't have a good foundation in their knowledge and in their grammar. And of course, you can do that with a lot of books. But yeah, those were like my three problems with the book. But I would still, recommend it as a beginner for someone to, especially if someone is kind of in a rigid way of thinking, because how, like we all said, like the way he asked the questions coming from a gorilla, it kind of, has you on the edge of your seat, like wanting to read more. I think I was uh, listen and reading the book 1 hour at a time, which only takes 6 hours to read the full book. So it's not like it's like 600 pages. But yeah, hell,
Yeah, it's an easy read.
yep, yep. You can read that book in one day, 6 hours, and I did it in just a weekend. So if anybody wants to say something, feel free. Derek.
He brought up another big term he brought up is diversity. We talked about competition, but I think, and that's kind of a hot topic word in the modern days, but it is an important term in that nature does show us things, right? Nature we can look at, especially like allegorically, to understand concepts, to understand flows of nature, right? Um, we can observe it and recognize patterns, and that's valid. That's valuable, and it shows us this how life thrives with diversity, right? When a human makes the choice to eliminate competition or eliminate diversity in order to control, um, the human becomes godlike, right? And that's what Brandon just alluded to. That's basically the tenets of Satanism, is that we don't need to understand what is the great all, what is the great God, what is the great mind. We can become the great mind, and we decide what's best for all. And by making that supposition, by making that jump in logic, that we can decide the laws of nature and we can decide the laws of man, we can decide the laws of flow on this planet, whether it's adjusting the temperature by spraying chemicals in the sky, or damming up rivers, or growing food in massive depleting style technological methods. We can do those things, but we always have the choice to recognize that maybe we should not. And the ability to self-organize ourselves or self-disorganize ourselves is our freedom. And that's our ability to look at nature and look at the flows of nature and look at the diversity around us and say, is it good if we remove that? Is it good if we take apart the DNA of the plants and make them grow just the way we want them to, as if there will be no effect, as if we're the God of reality and we can just create whatever the heck we want and don't expect there to be any fallout or negative consequences? And we can see this has been done for quite some time. And like I said, not only being done, but educated to the next generation that this is a good thing to do and this is the way we should keep doing it. And if you say otherwise, well, move to another country. That is the type of mentality that is keeping us in our own cage, in our own captive minds, where we're not able to see this hubris of humans that can't recognize the natural consequences of the actions that we're doing and where they're leading. And we can all see in our own personal lives that we have choices every day. You can either do something or don't do it. And if you do it, there's going to be consequences. And if you don't do it, there's going to be consequences. And we understand this on a personal level with fault and blame. But when we try to project it collectively on the whole planet and control everybody, or think that we have the ability to do that, is when we get ridiculous. And so I think, even though the book doesn't supply the solution, we have the solution in our hearts. And that's for each of us to keep asking these questions of why, doing this work of philosophy and really thinking it out and meditating, and then working together like we are in these meetings to kind of hash out these problems and work through the differences that we have to find the best path forward. If we do that, like we might realize, like, hey, you guys, I know it was really cool that we invented this machine that can fly through the air, but what if people that have bad intentions start spraying stuff out of them that poisons the rest of us? Maybe we shouldn't do that. Maybe we should work together and make sure that any flying contraptions that go in the air are safe before we let them leave the ground. Let's work together on having a solution for that, because that could be a big problem. We could all die. You know what I mean? And without that ability to reason and come up with solutions and work together towards what's going to work and not work, we're just prey. We're just victims to the collective which for all we know is controlled off planet or by an alien or by a AI bot at a certain point. I mean, how do we know if we're just following the rules and the edicts of what was passed down to us from the last generation or the current government administration or king or person in power with the ring of power, you know? So it's really about coming back down to the individual level and having these conversations and debates and working in our own psyche and observing nature to recognize what's happening and what consequences we want and what consequences we don't want. And we have that ability.
Cool. I would just say
Jerry was
that, go ahead, Derek.
I was gonna
Well,
wait for Jerry to say something. You skipped
I
it.
felt
oh,
like I
Jerry,
should say something, so
Yeah.
I'll be short. Yeah, Chris, man, you nailed it, my friend. Like, morality is written in the heart. We know what the difference between right and wrong is, but yeah, Jim, you brought up earlier, like, we know what right and wrong is, but then Mark says he'll ask that question to people in the street and they give complete different answers. So it's like we need to teach this more to people. Natural law, objective morality. But yeah, Chris, you nailed it, man. Like, we all have choice. That's what freedom is. And there's gonna be consequences for our behaviors. So I guess so what we can do is the right thing, and that's to teach natural law or objective morality under natural law. And that is the answer, which I think is important to get the full meal, right? Not not go halfway up the mountain and then settle down or settle there. It's to go all the way. So I'll pass it to you, Jim.
thanks, Jerry. I mean, yeah, there's like, I don't know, so many ways to say this, but we're always talking about harm, right? And rights. So, you know, that um you'll have the right to be free from harm, and that when it comes to living out of balance, it's harmful. So we can look at that as people become to process morality, and we know that most people don't. But as they do, and they can look at it and say, okay, this action, this way of living is harmful, then of course it begins in the mind, but then that's how we can start to become in balance. But I really think that people have to recognize that this way of living is harmful, and then just look at the harm that it causes. Think about it, like, as you know, and then is it possible to get in a balance? Like, I know Brandon said it before, like it seems really, really hard. Like when you got like, how do you get 10 million people living in one place at the same time to get moral at once? You know, that's especially when the external is keeping them from being moral internally. So, but that's what I keep going back to, getting screwed up with. But that would be like, as a solution, my thought. Like people have to process the harm that we're causing by living this way, and then there'd be a gradual procession into balance. Because according to natural law, we can't stay herded up like that in one area because it's out of balance with the environment, and there's no technology. Like ecology doesn't care about technology. You know, it's natural law doesn't care. I don't see how there's any technology that can override ecology. Like we keep trying, like we have plumbing and you know things like that, and we can filter water with those kind of technologies to clean up this what we polluted, but it's just band-aids, there's nothing. So of course, it's like it just seems like we would have to figure out how to get into balance, but that starts in the mind. And I can't see how us staying crammed up it'll always be out of balance just because, and we couldn't be moral internally if we're moral externally, causing harm. So
Yeah. Hey, Jim, you remember Ishmael's final, well, it was really just his only wish, but it was, towards the end of the book. Um, he said his only wish was for the human guy to actually go out into the external world and teach these things, teach 100 people, and then they're going to teach 100 people, and so on, as he said. And
that's
that
true.
made me think immediately to the 100th monkey effect. It's not quite the same as that theory, but yeah, I kind of went ape shit hearing a primate, talk about that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, teaching people the right knowledge of natural law, not uh, the other variants of, the natural order of, whatever. But yeah, not, and also it's contradictory to the knowledge to rule the world that the takers have, right? Reference to the book and what Ishmael talks about all the time. So yeah, it's not the leavers that are really interested in that knowledge, like the natives, Native Americans and Indians, Aboriginals, I suppose. And it's like them versus the colonizers in a sense. So I found that interesting. And yeah, the coloners, sorry, that's what I meant. How many were ensconced in, dogmatic religions and all that stuff. And it was funny in the book when they Ishmael mentioned about, talking about, yeah, the religious, behavior that, is the fallout from these doctrines or whatever, and how many people were, fell to their death, cursing the gods and that kind of stuff and yada yada. And I was just thinking to myself, well, I wonder how many gods cursed them, kind of thing. Being silly, but yeah. The beliefs in the gods, it can also lead to moral subjectivity as well. So that's another thing that kind of came to mind. But yeah, proper,
Virus.
yeah, heart-based morality, like do unto others as you would to yourself. And I want to rewind that back in context also, because a lot of people just don't have that heart activated because they're operating on their lower senses. And I've talked about this quite a bit, but like in reference to like the animal kingdom, the lower senses kind of represents also like that animal instinct, where the animals don't have that neocortex to really you know recognize certain patterns and have a proper, higher self-awareness and awareness of others, and all that stuff. We all know these things that Homo sapiens have that other animals don't. But yeah, animals are operating on instinct for the most part. So yeah, that really separates us from them. And so yeah, why can we not, be operating from that heart-based intelligence? So that's a shame. We've been led down the wrong garden path or whatever. And it sucks because this earth is so beautiful and so bountiful with this fauna and flora and all these things. I love that passage in the book where he talks about Africa, where, the animals, it's just like, yeah, I mean, you could think about the Lion King in a sense, but yeah, they're just a whole bunch of animals. They're not living all harmoniously. Of course, there's, carnivores and that kind of stuff, but you just look at around like a non-touched, by an environment not touched by humans. Sorry. And you just think about the beautiful, luscious, all the fruits and vegetables or whatever is going on there, and it's just, yeah, like how can we kind of have that come back, and how can we as humans rectify all the damage that's been done, right? So yeah, it seems like we're kind of winding down towards these solutions that were, everyone's been kind of mentioning that. So yeah, how can we have a more self-sustaining, healthy lifestyle that ripples out to the macrocosm and really shifts and shakes the foundations of these, taker like societies, you know? I know.
Yeah. And I think the big lesson there is there's no reason to take more than what we need. Right. And so that's kind of a simple kindergarten breakdown for people. But, I mean, a lot of morality is that, like, yeah, take what you need, but don't, if you went to someone's house and they're serving dinner and you sat down at the table and they put the food out in the center of the table and you started taking food off and putting it in your jacket and in your purse, I mean, that's pretty damn rude. It's going to be obvious, right? It's like they put out food for everyone. It's for you to eat right now, not for you to take everybody else's and save it for you later. And that's exactly kind of the point this book is making. Is just, let's not get carried away here, guys. Let's think about what we're doing a little bit here. So I don't know. Any last other closing thoughts before we close up this one? It's been a great talk. I love this book that it came through and gave us all a lot to work with.
Right. And another quick thing to kind of give more credence to what Chris was talking about. During Halloween when people go and partake in this ritual. Some houses would just leave candy out. And some people will go up and just take the whole, like take all the candy. It's like, come on, like let's have some common sense. Let's have some care. Like you don't need all that candy. Save some from other people. But yeah, the most important thing that I want to uh get across and say is really having a grasp foundation and an understanding of how natural law. Um, I see more and more people who are using that term and they don't have an idea of what it truly means as far as or how we are talking about it, how people on the One Great Work talking about it, how Mark Passio talking about it from just a moral, objective standpoint. And see, this is key because this is the most important knowledge that I have come across. And you see, like when you start using natural law in reference to the animals, then you start to equate man with animals, and then that's where the satanic mindset, which is the complete opposite of what we are talking about. And what I mean by like a good solid foundation, I mean like you should be able to be shook and awoke in the middle of your sleep and be able to explain what natural law is, the set of universal, objective, non-man-made, binding principles that govern the conditions of behaviors of intelligent beings. You should be able to spit that out all the time. Like get it in your mindset, get it in your subconscious. Can repeat it. What is a right? What is a wrong? You should be able to say this at all times in all places. You need to get it in your subconscious and have it be consistent, because if we really want to truly change the world, then it has to start in here. And a lot of people think they know about how natural law when they may have like 50% of it, but no, you need to have it all and be able to explain it, be able to teach it, be able to, how look at it from how different aspects. And that's just how I wanted, to get across because, how we share a lot of, we share certain people's, posts and they're talking about natural law and they clearly don't have a 1% understanding, hell about it because they're trying to equate it to systems in nature that applies to animals or plants, and it's like no, that's the incorrect way of looking at it. We're talking about objective morality because without morality there is no evolution for us. There is zero evolution. There is only um there's only entropy, chaos, and slavery. You cannot leave morality consciousness, truth at the door. Those three things are darn near one and the same, because without consciousness, you don't have morality, because the consciousness is going to recognize the pattern of objective morality to be able to observe the consequences in reality. And without the truth, then, of course, the truth is the consistency of all the possibilities that could have happened that trickle down into actually what did happen. And the greatest truth is that morality is objective. So I just wanted to get that part held across.
The icing on the cake. Thanks, Brandon, for laying that down, putting the concrete pillar that we can all stand on, and laying that foundational thing to leave people with, to think about and study. Thanks, guys, for having this conversation. I recommend listeners check out the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn, and use it as a way to consider your philosophy and ask more questions. And don't stop there. Keep asking these questions. And that's the path for a better future for all humanity.
I'm in a cage, I'm in a prison, I'm in a mental prison, and a physical one at that, and definitely a spiritual one, whether that's recognized at a conscious level or not.
As I wait for my sleep, the situation's got me thinking deep. Will the earth the sink and all life is in extinction? Evil creeps in your dreams, secret teams throwing memes in the filling in the in-betweens. My control for the teens, now they got you on your knees. I'm making my way through this open maze, but I'm dazed by mass confusion. All the images that they're using.
There's the rest, race to the tip of the top of the pyramid. The pyramid.
Falling in, to this low level of spiritual awareness, such that these methods can have any effect over.
I was having a buildup of shows that I'd created and published, but I hadn't got a chance to get them on the various platforms, and I wanted to have them on 3 or 4 or 5 different platforms. I think there's other content creators out there that are struggling to keep up with getting their uploads done, and so I want to recommend them to my good friend Jerry. Jerry has done an excellent job helping me with my podcast and catching up on things I was behind on.
Sometimes when you upload a video, there can be errors. And that's the stuff I don't want content creators such as yourself to go through. I want to help you. I upload it to your platform. I upload clips to media channels in a fast and efficient manner. I serve freedom fighters. I take weight off their shoulders so they can focus on their content creation. It takes a while to just get a clip uploaded, and sometimes you don't want to worry about that stuff. I take this to heart, and I help the people that care for freedom.
Hello,